UiChemy allows you to convert your Figma designs into Elementor, Gutenberg, or bricks. And this can save you lots of manual work if you regularly have to convert Figma to WordPress. Because without a tool like this, it's a lot of copying, pasting, and exporting. So this plugin basically pushes as much as possible of what you already have in Figma to Elementor. So this tool is made for agencies and freelancers that often have to convert Figma to WordPress and want to speed up their workflow. This is not for agencies if you want full control over every element, because UiChemy has to make some assumptions in order to make the responsive settings work. But I can tell you that UiChemy is by far the best converter that we have right now in the WordPress market. And this is because UiChemy respects the professional workflow. So with global colors, typography, the box container, responsive settings, it's all there. And so how this works is that you're basically preparing for development already in Figma. So it's not magic. You have to prepare quite a few things to get a good conversion. And from my experience, it is about 90% correct if you prepare your file correctly in Figma. But 90% it's huge. That's a huge time saver if you often convert Figma designs. And so you need to learn it. That's what this video is. I'm gonna help you to learn how to use this tool, but I just want to say that UiChemy knows that it takes a bit of practice, and that's why they have a very generous 60-day money-back guarantee, and this is not normal in our industry. That's very long, and they even have a free version that you can use for some tests. So I'm excited to dive in because I've actually been a part of the redesign process of this plugin. I want to show you what's possible in this video, but if after this video you want to learn more, you're interested, then check out the guides that they have on their website, because they do also have their own educational material. Okay, let's get started with UiChemy. So let's prepare our file in Figma. I'm gonna work with this page. So the first thing I always do is just make a duplicate of my artboard, because it's always good to have an original one, and then I delete my header and my footer. This is because I want to export page by page, and I don't need the header and the footer on every single page. So I'm just deleting them because I will set those up separately later. Then you want to clean up your layers panel here on the left, because in development everything has to be in boxes in the right order. So we also have to do that right here. And so you want to get to a point where your left panel for each page is just all of your sections in order. So in this case, hero content, that's actually my top section. So that one should be at the top. Call to action is actually the bottom section. So I'm going to drag that to the bottom. Here I can see my gallery, but that's actually above the call to action. So make sure to first clean up the left panel over here. And it's of course also a smart idea to give them good names. Then you need to optimize your colors and typography to make sure that it doesn't become a mess in Elementor. So make sure that all of your text layers are connected to one of your colors, whether you have saved them as normal colors or as a variable. Make sure they're all connected. This is of course the proper way to work, because if you don't do this, then it will be a lot of work in Elementor later to connect everything by hand. And it's the same for your typography. Make sure that everything is connected to one of the text styles. So for example, right here, I forgot to link this one. So let's also link it to body L. There you go. And I realized that I haven't actually used my body XL. So I also want to delete this to make sure that it doesn't get transferred to the Elementor site settings. So now I have a clean setup over here and a clean color setup. So now I'm also ready with that. Then you also want to make sure that you delete any unnecessary frames, because in Figma, people often add too many frames. So here we can see the situation where we have this frame and this frame, but they both look the same. And so I can ungroup this one and the layout still works. Another place where there's often too many boxes is inside of icons, because when you import an icon, it is often inside of a frame. But in this situation, we don't need this frame anymore, so we can just right click and ungroup, and that saves us from one extra container. So now there's just this vector and this text inside of this auto layout frame. For buttons, it's actually the other way around. You don't want your button background to be a separate layer like this. So for all of your buttons, make sure to select your background and your text and turn it in an auto layout, or just press Shift A. So now it's a frame with a background fill and a text. And we can see another problem right here, and that is that my background is actually not part of my hero section container. It's actually all the way here at the bottom. So even if I would put it here, then UiChemy would treat this as a separate element, but it's the background of our hero section. So instead of doing it like this, I'm gonna delete that background. I'm gonna go to this section and I'm gonna give that a background color, but now it's not full width. So let's drag it all the way to the edges. But now we have no padding left and right. So we should add some padding. And this is where the box container in Elementor comes in. Because in Elementor, each background section can be a box container, which saves you from using one container. And so you need to put in a value right here. In this case, my main box container is 1120. And the actual canvas is 1440, which is a very common size that people use. And so I subtracted my box container from the whole canvas, divided it by 2 to know how much pixels we need left and right. So that's why I put 160 right here, because the total is 160. And so if you calculate it like this, you save yourself from one extra container in Elementor, because UiChemy has a box container feature. We just need to make sure that inside of the plugin we're gonna check that, but we're now optimizing, so let's continue. So here's the same situation. This is not an optimized box. You should make it full width and then add that left and right padding. Here we can see an example where we have a section that has a box that should be within the box container, and we have a full width photo slider. But if there is a group or an auto layout that exceeds the box container, then in Elementor, it will turn this whole section into a full width container. And that's not what I want, because I want to work in the most global way possible to get the best result. And so in this situation, I would split them up into a top container with some padding. And then this section can stay full width. Just need to change the spacing over here to make sure it looks good. And you should also add that padding on the top and on the bottom. So here you can see a section where I have 96 pixels on the top and on the bottom, which is the space that I like to use for all of my big sections. And by doing this, you also don't have to worry about the height of each sections. So here I have a section where I have not set up the top and bottom padding because it has a specific fixed height. But that's not what I want in Elementor. I just want this box to be as tall as it needs to be. So I'm going to put it on hug the content, then it will be super small, but then I'm going to add that spacing using one of my variables, but you can also just use a number like this. So now the box will just be as tall as it needs to be. And now I just need to make sure that all of these boxes are neatly connected like this, but you don't even have to do that manually, like connect them to each other. You can just do that by grabbing your whole artboard, turning your whole artboard into an auto layout, and then just make sure that the spacing between each section is on 0, which then stacks all of the sections perfectly. Another thing you need to keep in mind is height and width settings. Make sure that you do it according to the proper auto layout tools. So in this example, we have a group here, which is actually an auto layout. There is proper spacing in between. I set up everything correctly, but the heading inside of here are just some random values. So it looks good in Figma, but it's not aligned to the container. There's still this gap. And if you leave it like this, then UiChemy will just use this pixel value to decide the width, which is of course not what you want. So in this case, you want to put it on fill the container for the width, because the width of this container should define the width of this heading. And for the height, we're not going to put it on fill the container. We're going to put it on hug the content, because vertically we don't want it to take up more space than needed. So this is true everywhere unless you want a smaller width. So in this example, I don't want the width to fill the whole container because then this box would be too wide. So in this case, it is okay to put it like this so that UiChemy just puts it on 740 in this example. So this may feel like a lot of work, but you have to do this in Elementor anyways. And so if you learn how to design in Figma like this, then it's actually not a lot of work in Elementor. You just need to properly do the job inside of Figma. Okay, let's now talk about images, how to prepare our images. UiChemy treats images that are just image layers differently than images that are set up as a background fill. So if you drag an image into Figma, it will automatically become an image layer. Or if you start out with a rectangle and then change it to an image, it will also become an image layer. Here we can see another one. This is an image layer. So all of the images that are set up like this will be exported using Figma's export features. This means that there's going to be a compression because it's using the export features from Figma. You can set up the scale in UiChemy on the scale you want it to export, and then it just pushes those images to Elementor. But keep in mind that the rounded corners are actually baked into the PNG because UiChemy exports the images as PNG. So if you want to control the rounded corners in Elementor, then make sure that the radius is on 0 before you export so that you have that control in Elementor. But both options are totally fine. So then the images that are used as background in groups or frames or auto layouts, those will be exported in full because it doesn't use the export feature from Figma here. So here you can see an example where I have this image as a background from this Pilates studio. But when I exported this section, the image was used as a background, but as you can see, it's still 2 megabytes, which is way too big. And of course, you could have some kind of compression plugin installed on your WordPress website to make this process easier, but you can also just compress the images inside of Figma. There are some compression plugins available like Tiny Image. And UiChemy also said that they're working on including a compressor inside of UiChemy. So hopefully we can see that soon, but just keep that in mind for now. So by knowing that, how would you convert a Bento grid like this? In this layout, we have an image here on the left, which is fine. But then inside of here, we have an image inside of a frame, which is then part of another frame. But if we would export it like this, then Elementor would not turn this into an image. It would turn this into a container and then put the image as a background. But that's not what I want here. So in this situation, what I would do is I would reduce the corner radius to 0, then just right click, copy as a PNG, and then paste that inside of that column and delete that old structure. So now I turned that frame and image into just an image. And now I can put back the corner radius if I want to. So these are the small things that you can do to reduce the amount of containers you get in Elementor. And you also make sure that the framing of the image is exactly like you want. Because in this situation, the crop can be different than what you imagined. And when you're working with custom shape dividers, something creative like this, then of course the question is it part of this top section or this bottom section? And then you basically have two options. First, you can just delete this whole thing from the artboard, export it as an SVG or a PNG, and then just separately inserting it in Elementor. But if that's too much work, then you need to make sure that the shape is baked into this background image, which you can do by just temporarily hiding the content, then selecting your whole outer layout container, copy as a PNG. And then just removing whatever the fill was and make sure to place that image as the background. Same trick as we did before. So now it's part of our image and therefore we know for sure that it will be exported correctly. Vector images often contain multiple parts and it's better to combine them. So for example, like this, we have a testimonial section right here and we have this Google icon. But inside of the layers panel, you can see that this shape actually consists of a lot of different vectors. And so if you would convert this to Elementor, then this would go horribly wrong, probably something like this. So you want to make sure that you grab that whole group and then right click and flatten. So now it is one shape and then it will be exported as one shape. Here you can see another example where in this box, which is auto layout, I have this vector shape, which actually consists of 3 different parts. And these 3 different parts also have strokes, which is a problem. So in this case, I would do the same, grab that whole group and click on flatten. And then that stroke will be gone and it will be one shape. Same thing happens often in logos where it consists of multiple different shapes, flatten. And even if your icons have backgrounds like this, then you can convert this whole circle into one object by flattening it. And this is the most minimal setup. We have one auto layout with one text and one vector. Here we have another interesting example where we have an icon with a vector and an ellipse. But if we flatten this one, then all of a sudden there is a stroke behind it. And if we delete that stroke, then it's gone. So when that happens, you need to go back and then first make sure that your icon actually is outlined so that it doesn't have the stroke anymore. And then you can grab the whole group and flatten it and then it stays perfectly. This is the same for social media icons. Sometimes the stroke disappears. So first outline the stroke and then flatten it. Talking about strokes, the same thing applies for a section like this, an FAQ. So what people often do in Figma is that they add lines with the line tool right here in Figma. And that looks great in Figma, but in Elementor you also don't want to add a line between each of these cards, because otherwise you get a situation like this. And so then it's better to also use the stroke, but then put the stroke only at the bottom, which with a little bit of padding inside creates the same visual effect. Or look at a situation like this. You can add lines in Figma right here, but in Elementor you cannot easily do vertical lines. So then it's better to just put a left and right stroke on this middle auto layout so that in Elementor it can also do that because Elementor has the stroke feature. So as you can see, you have to think like a developer because we are preparing for development right here. So right now your design is maybe not optimized, but the next time you create a Figma project, you can follow these best practices and then it's not extra work. It's already part of your workflow. So if you feel like your page is optimized, then you can open the UI Cami plugin. And now we're gonna make sure that our main artboard is selected. Our artboard is called V17. It doesn't really matter, but this name will convert into the page title in WordPress. So you know what, let's just change it to Home Test 1. And then I'm gonna follow the step-by-step method. Okay, this is the right page we have selected. Let's click next. And now it will ask us to lock some layers. So let's take a look what UI Cami means. If we click on this target icon, we will go to a specific region. And I see over here that we have a group with 3 images in it. And if we don't do anything here, then UI Cami will just export these 3 images as 3 separate images. But for this image, that's not really needed. So then it's just easier to lock it. So if I lock it right here, then you're basically telling UI Cami that you want this to be exported as one image, which is fine for this layout unless you really want to animate the images separately. But yeah, that's not really needed here. So I'm just going to lock that layer. We're going to go to the next one. And then I see over here that we have 2 images inside, but these 2 images I want to export separately because I maybe want to add a scroll effect to it or an animation. So for these 2 images, I'm just going to leave them inside of this auto layout frame. That is fine. Let's move on to the next one, which is the stars. Okay, these stars over here, I'm actually going to convert that into a widget. So for now, I'm also just going to ignore that. But if I would lock this, then it will just convert these stars into an image as well. And then the last one, what is that? The gallery. Okay, the gallery I also want to convert into a widget because I want to use the gallery widget over there. So for now, I am done over here. This is all I wanted to do because the rest of the images will be exported as image widgets anyways, or as container backgrounds as we have discussed. Okay, let's go and click next. Here we can do auto widget selection or manual widget tagging. I highly recommend to always do the manual widget tagging because this auto feature only tags a few widgets and that is not enough, almost never. So a manual widget tagging, then it asks you one more question. Is it already in auto layout or do you want us to convert it? I have just showed you how to basically prepare everything in auto layout. So if you're watching this video, you probably already have it in auto layout. So let's go to next. And now you can start tagging widgets. I have already tagged some widgets before I made this recording, but here we still have a few that are open. So now we need to tell UiChemy that this is a heading, because by default, it will turn everything into the text editor widget in Elementor, which we don't want because this should be a heading. Okay, so we need to tag it. So I'm just command or control clicking on the heading. And I'm just telling it that this is a heading. What heading is this? This is the H1, the main title on my website. And click save. And then it's turning it into a heading. So now UiChemy knows that this should be a heading widget. Here we have another one, but that's a smaller one. So let's also select it and select H2 and click save. Great. Images we don't have to tag and the normal text layers as well. And then here, for example, I want to turn this into an animated counter. So I'm selecting this whole box and I'm just looking for counter. There we go. And here we have to select a few more things. So it needs to end in number 1. This will only count from 0 to 1 in this example. The title is actually the Pearl District. It can read that. The starting number should be 0. This counter is a little bit more boring than the other ones. Separator I don't have here. The prefix is what comes in front of the number. In this case, that is the hashtag, and there's nothing after. So now I can click save, and then this one will be converted to a counter widget. Very cool. Here's another thing you should know. If you have a situation like this in Elementor, you want that to be an icon row. So if you search for icon, you can see icon list over here. Sorry, I said row, it's list. So if you click on that, UiChemy will automatically see that this is a auto layout frame with multiple frames in it. So then it will ask like, oh, do you want to use the vector here as the icon? And yes, that's the case. The text should be 60-minute session. It automatically sees that. Perfect. So now I can click save. And now I know that this one will also be converted properly. And also don't forget here to tag all of your buttons as an actual button. If you have an icon, then you can select that as well. But for most buttons, you only have to link the text and then you're good to go. And then here, this star, I said that I wanted to turn that into a star. That is called the rating widget in Elementor. So I'm just gonna select 0 to 5. The rating is 5 out of 5 stars. And then the icon is this one. So this one should also work. All right. Let's see, this one has been turned into 1 frame. That's perfect. And then for this whole image row, I want to use the carousel widget, the image carousel widget. So once I select that, I can select the images over here and the names over here correspond with the names here on the left. So here you can see these are just images, not images inside of frames, exactly what it needs to be. So when I click save, then this whole frame will be converted into a carousel widget. Okay, I think we are ready to go for the next step. Everything looks well tagged. So now I'm gonna click save back because I'm still inside of one. Okay, now I'm gonna click next. And here you can set up the responsive settings. If you wanna go fast, then you can do the auto responsive one. But I like to check how UI Cami does the responsive settings. So how the fonts scale down, etc. So here you can take a look, for example, how they do it. They have a normal mode with multiple breakpoints, but clamp is better because then it automatically scales down from desktop to mobile. So we can see that fonts that are bigger than 100 pixels will be scaled down like this. I think their default values are a little bit lower, but you can change this exactly how you want. Just take a look if you like the scaling. You can do the same for the padding and the line height. Just check their numbers to see if you agree. So now we need to sync it with Elementor, because this is the moment where UI Cami is going to synchronize your colors and typography and your box container with Elementor. So let's add a site over here. I'm gonna click add a site, and now we need the site URL and security token. So you can find that inside of the UI Cami plugin. So make sure that you install the UI Cami plugin and then walk through the steps over here. Let's go. We are working with Elementor. We have installed the Figma plugin. Yeah, we are already in here. We have installed Elementor and Elementor Pro, which is optional, by the way. And then we can start importing. Make sure that the Flexbox and the unfiltered file uploads is activated before you do the conversion. And here we can then see the site URL and the security token. So let's copy those. Put them in here and click on connect. All right, so now the Figma plugin is connected to the WordPress plugin. So now they can basically talk to each other. And here we can connect all of our colors and typography. But the first thing I want to check out is the global width of the container. Remember, in my design, we have used that 160 pixels left and right because our main container is 1120. So I want to have the same exact thing in Elementor, of course. So I'm also going to put that on 120. And then I'm going to add a breakpoint over here. I always like to add a laptop over here. I use 85. And then I also want to add a tablet. I'm also going to use 85% over there. And then I want to add mobile, and I often like to use 90%. These are the values that are often used and they work pretty well. So now let's make sure that all of our colors from Figma are added to Elementor. So I'm going to click on add new. You can see all of my variables are here. If you work with styles, you can find them over here. I'm just going to say pick all of the colors. So all of the colors from Figma will be sent to Elementor. These first four, you can ignore them. You can link them as well if you want, but everything will work fine if you just leave it like that. And then also let's add all of our typography. The order here is a bit weird because in my Figma, it looks like this, but that is fine for now. I hope they will fix that soon. We can also leave the default ones from Elementor here. So now if we click on sync, UI Cami will make sure that all of those things will be sent to Elementor. We're going to check that out after the conversion. So once that's done, we can go to next. We're almost done here. We just have to set up on how big we want the images to be. Remember what I said about the exports. So this is for the images that are actual image layers like this. You can make them a bit sharper here if you want. The default values here are fine. I'm just going to click on convert, and then I'm going to use the direct import feature because that allows you to create a new page. And I'm working on a new website here, so I don't really have a page yet. And now it asks me exactly that. It says, do you want to create a new page for this artboard? Oh, it still says V17 here. I'm not exactly sure because I think I changed the name, but that's fine. The page name we can change. And now we can click on import. And it looks like it's done. So let's click on open and let's see our final result. And there you go. Let's give it a scroll. Yes, these numbers animate. This all looks good. Okay, we have a gap over here that we need to fix. But our icons are in here, the buttons are in here, these images are all in here. This image is also in here. Unfortunately, our carousel didn't work, but our design is almost perfect. So let's open it in Elementor and let's take a look. All right, inside of here, it has imported this as a button. This is one image. These are separate images. Now I just need to go inside of these containers and make sure that the gap is on 0 so that these also align. There you go. But as you can see, it's almost perfect. This all looks great. The rating has worked over here. The typography is all linked. Beautiful. The colors are linked. And unfortunately, our images didn't upload. But now I remember that I should have locked these images as well, because UiChemy does recommend to lock as many images as possible. So if I would have locked this one, then this would have worked, because I did have a successful export with this design before. I just forgot to lock these images. So let's quickly check out the site settings. And inside of our global fonts, we can see that all of our typography is included, and the clamps are here as well, as you can see. If you want to preview it inside of Elementor, then you should just add a semicolon at the end. Maybe UiChemy can improve that, but you need to add a semicolon to see the preview live in Elementor. That's how it works. And you can also, of course, change the order here. That will not break your website, to make it a little bit more organized. Okay, let's quickly check out our colors. Yes, our global colors are also in here, including the right naming, so very nice. And let's also check out our layout settings. So we can see over here that we have desktop 1120, and then we have a tablet and mobile, but it did not add the laptop breakpoint, because UiChemy cannot add breakpoints itself. But the value is there if you add the laptop breakpoint. So let's save that because I already tried this before. So now we can see that the laptop breakpoint has been added and that value is actually here. So it did add it, but UiChemy cannot add a breakpoint for you. Okay, so let's do a quick responsive check. I'm gonna publish this page. And there you go, the box container works. The fonts scale down with clamps and the spacing stays nice. This looks decent. Let's give it a scroll. Okay, maybe I want to put these images side to side. Maybe want to put this in a 2-column grid. Okay, this one definitely has to go here on the side. So we need to do a few adjustments here. And this is also a little bit too wide for my taste. This one looks fine. And of course, we're missing the carousel over here, but this one also looks fine. I would just decrease the padding left and right a little bit here. But honestly, UiChemy did an amazing job. And if I look inside of here, the container usage is actually not that extreme, because I prepared my Figma so well. I think I would not have added a lot more containers myself if I look at this. Okay, maybe this one was not needed over here, but it is very impressive. So as you can see, it does take a bit of preparation, but at least you're not having to copy and paste every single text layer, export all of the images individually, make all of your containers again. This, I think, is the best converter we have right now. So if you're a fan of converters, then I would say check it out. This is the link where you can get it. That's also an affiliate link. So I do earn a commission if you buy it via that link. So let's talk a little bit about the pricing. Because like I said, they have a very generous pricing. So if you would put it on monthly, you can literally test it out for $10 for the first month. You're not locked in for a year. And then if you don't like it, you can still ask your money back. It has 50 exports for that first month, which is quite a few websites. The free plan only has 5 exports, and even the free version comes with all of these templates. So I would say if you're serious about it, get the starters plan, check it out for 1 month. because this is not gonna hurt the bank. I, by the way, made the redesign when they went from version 3 to version 4. If you want to check out that story, then check out this video. I will also put a link in the description because it's quite an interesting story. And if you have any questions, then drop them in the comments below. I know UiChemy, they do actually check out my YouTube comments, so they will probably reply in the first few weeks. But you can, of course, always reach out to their own support as well. So yeah, I really hope that this can help some agencies out there to improve their building speed. Let me know what you think, and then I will hopefully see you in one of my next videos.